Welcome to the Personal Development Essentials podcast. Today I have the real pleasure to be interviewing an exceptional lady who is a certified mental health first aid instructor. And she's recently released a book, Life as a Rollercoaster, The Mayhem of Bipolar. And she's on a mission to raise awareness on mental health and mental well-being. Liz Rotherham, welcome to the show. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you very much, Ajay.
Liz, I wanted to ask with your mission to raise awareness about mental health, and I want you to tell us a bit about your story, how you've ended up in having such a mission. So I'm looking forward to hearing this fascinating story that you have.
Yeah, no, thank you. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to share. I was diagnosed with bipolar back in 2003. I went into a depression back in actually 2002, where I was being bullied at work, and I was also in a controlling relationship. I was drinking like it was going out of fashion. And I think the combination of all that and all what I've been through in my life, I never talked about things, so I kept putting it to the back of my mind and things like that, and portraying sort of a mask as if everything was okay. And like a computer, you know, when you overload it, at some point it's going to crash. And that happened, and I had a breakdown and went into a depression. Went to the doctor and was put on Prozac, and was on that for a couple of months, and then eventually got better. And then the following year, it was really strange because I started to get sort of spiritual feelings and things like that. And I mean, I have a connection with spirit anyway, but even more so. And I kept saying things, and people were saying to me, "Oh, how do you know that?" You know, it was like I was predicting the future in a bizarre sort of way. Trouble is, what happened is the more and more I thought of it, the more and more I convinced myself that I had magical powers, and started to lose the rationalization of my brain, to the point that I actually thought I was Jesus' sister, thought that I had magical powers, and thought I could stop a train with my hand, which is frightening. I couldn't comprehend. There was all manic thoughts in my head. I didn't know what was going on. Luckily for me, my boss at the time, he spotted some signs and symptoms that his family, there was a crossover, and he called my parents, and they came to my place of work and actually, you know, took me to the hospital. And at this point I was jumping around frantically. I was going up to everybody in the doctors saying, "I can do this for you, I can do this with you." I totally lost the plot. And they took me to see a community psychiatric nurse who then assessed me briefly, and then took me to hospital, a mental hospital, where I was put in front of a panel of 5 doctors, psychiatrists, community nurses. They were asking me questions, you know, did I hear voices, you know, constant firing at me. And I just didn't know what the hell I was going on. Didn't realise I was in hospital. I thought I was actually in Rydale High, you know, like on the Grease set, thinking any minute now the bell's going to go off and I'm going to be let out. It was all very bizarre. And it's that when it was there that they actually diagnosed me with bipolar and sectioned me in a mental hospital for a month.
I just want to go back a little bit in what you were saying, and I want to ask a couple of things. First, were there's a gradual build-up towards that stage when you realized that what you were saying, that you thought you had magical powers? Did it build up over time, or was it quite sudden? And second, I want to ask, because some people, or many people, I suppose, they don't know what bipolar is. So share this with us, please.
Yeah, definitely. It was a build-up because there was a combination of very positive things that happened in my life. I got promoted at work. I split up with my controlling boyfriend at the time. That was after 7 years. So it felt like I'd been released from prison, I suppose. And then I actually had a nose job because I had a bump on my nose, and I actually got a nose job. So I had a combination of three things that went, so positive, and it whether it affected something in my brain, like a chemical reaction or something like that, but it sent me into a state of euphoria.
Mm-hmm.
And with the bipolar is actually different levels of mood. So you can have fluctuation of downs and fluctuations of highs, or manic states or mania. Now, with myself, I've actually been diagnosed with bipolar 1, which is a very severe, I can't even say it, severe case of very highs, extreme highs and extreme lows. And obviously I'm on medication to stabilize that.
All right. So it is what we used to call manic depression, isn't it? Okay.
Yes.
All right. And I was doing some homework just to find out a bit more about it. And it says that there is no clear cause of that. So the medicine doesn't know what is causing it. Is that right?
I think it's a combination of things, because people say it could be hereditary. Mm-hmm. However, in my case, I have no family history of any depression or any psychosis. So, I mean, for some people it might be that. There's others that it could be where you go through traumas in your life and maybe in your childhood that then you're subjected to later on, that comes out, it manifests later in life. Or it could be just your lifestyle. It could be a combination of drugs, alcohol that stems you into or spirals you into depression or a state of mania.
I see. Okay, thank you. And so going back to that time when you said you were diagnosed and sectioned, which again, I'm going to clarify that for the non-British listeners of the podcast, because sectioned, I think it's a very British phrase. It means to be committed to a psychiatric hospital. Okay, so going back to that time, what happened next? How did you cope? And how did you cure?
Yeah, sure. I mean, when I was, committed to hospital or sectioned, it was the best thing that ever happened to me. Because if I hadn't been, my boss hasn't spotted it, my parents picked me up and I was sectioned, I would have, without a shadow of doubt, I would have jumped in front of a train, not because I was depressed, but because I had lost rationalization of my brain. I thought I had magical powers, and I thought if I stopped the train, I'd be resurrected, because I was, thought I was Jesus' sister. And that is very frightening. So they sectioned me because I was obviously a danger to myself. Mm-hmm. I then spent a month in hospital trying to get better. And every night I had to queue up for medication. And they gave me a mixture of medication. I had side effects. It was horrendous, because they were trying to get the right sort of medication. And then what happened, unfortunately, was because I was so high, and the amount of medication they gave me to bring me down, I went into actually a depression. So when I left hospital and when I was discharged, I actually went into a clinical depression. And I had to go back with my parents. Mm-hmm. I lost my house, I lost my car, and my job was in jeopardy. And I went back to live with my parents. And I remember I stayed in bed for 2 weeks and stared out of the window at a tree. I lost my appetite. It felt like a black cloak had been pulled over my head, and I had no thoughts. And all I wanted to do was end my life, because I didn't have any thoughts. It was all negative. And my mum came to my bed every single night and she held my hand and she said to me, "You will get better, Liz, you will, I promise you." And I just kept looking at her saying, "No, I won't." And when you hear people say, when people are depressed, they'll surely snap out of it and things like that. Believe me, I am a very positive person. And no matter what, if someone had said that to me, I was not capable of doing that. My mind had shut down completely. Mm-hmm. And it was only through my family and my friends' support and constant encouragement that I began to get better, but it took me 10 months to actually get back to some kind of normality.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
I read something that you wrote on, I think it's on your website, that you felt like you were not in control of yourself, like you were a puppet being manipulated, which I can only imagine it's very scary.
Yes, definitely. That is more so when I go into, which is called psychosis, which is you have like a psychotic episode, which is when you hallucinate, you think you're delusional, you start seeing things,
Mm-hmm.
it feels like someone is actually, like you've just said, like a puppet.
Mm-hmm.
And the weird thing is, you don't know what you're doing. They're there controlling your mind. It's the most bizarre experience. The only thing I can relate it to is the film called Limitless, which is Bradley Cooper, if anyone knows it. He takes like a pill, and all of a sudden, he's the most intelligent person in the whole
Mm-hmm.
world. Like, he can hear things, he can see things. It's like that in psychosis, but it's frightening.
I see. And you said about people saying to just snap out of it, or and that is something that can't happen, even though you were a positive thinker and everything. So, what helped you? You mentioned the support from your family, but what made you change? What helped you change? Apart, obviously, from the medication, which I suppose was a part of the treatment, but it's more than that, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a combination. It's a combination of getting the medication right, the support from my family, the friends, the doctors, constantly talking to me, encouraging me, because I'd just shut down. I'd shut down like a computer. So constant talking and encouraging at that point when I was depressed and not being left alone, very
Mm-hmm.
important.
Mm-hmm.
Something must have sunk in, because gradually, mum said, come down, have some food. I was smoking like a trooper. She gradually encouraged me. She didn't leave me. They were monitoring me 24/7, bearing in mind that if they hadn't, I would have jumped in front of a train at the other end of the spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
So it was that helped me get through. And a clinical depression is actually where you can't function for longer than 2 weeks. As in, some people say they're depressed or feeling a bit down, you can normally flip out of it in your mood. But when someone is clinically depressed for a period of longer than 2 weeks, that is when support and help is needed.
And you said that it took you about 10 months to get over it. So was that a period of gradually improving over 10 months? Or so what was the turning point at the end of 10 months? That was it that you said that, oh, I'm better now? Or was it, that's what I'm trying to understand.
Yeah, what it was very, very slow and gradual. Mum got me doing things. She started taking me outside in the fresh air. So I was building up like a confidence.
Were you aware that you were improving during those 10 months?
Yes, I was, but I
Okay.
still felt very down.
Okay.
My brain felt like it had been frazzled. I couldn't concentrate on anything. I couldn't read. I couldn't do anything. But slowly, mum took me out. She took me shopping. She tried to engage me in different things, like tried to get me to read a little bit. She read to me as well.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a slow improvement. I was smoking less. I started eating.
Mm-hmm.
So it did take a long time. And as I said, 10 months. And then I after that went back to work, but I still felt not right when I went back to work, I must admit, not fully until I, engaged in work again and then
Mm-hmm.
started using my brain more.
Okay, I see.
Yeah.
And what was the role of meditation, yoga, other holistic therapies, which I know that you did in all of this, in the
Yeah.
in the in the curing, I mean.
Yeah, I mean, I did a lot. I had a lot of counselling. I did a cognitive behaviour therapy, which was like
Mm-hmm.
an online course. I did that. I did meditation, and I still do meditation now. Meditation is brilliant. It does take practice. Some people, you know, they give up, but if you start with only like 5 minutes, believe me, you can then build up. And you, to be honest with you, you only need to really do it for 5 or 10 minutes just per day. You don't have to do it, you know, for half an hour. It's entirely up to you.
Mm-hmm.
Meditation is extremely important, and also mindfulness. Mindfulness is where you actually remain in the now rather than worry what's happened in the past, rather than worry what's happened in the future, because you can't change that,
Mm-hmm.
is actually remain in the now. So, and you try and bring your mind back constantly to the now, as in look about you, you know, in the fresh air, see what's about, see if you can see different colours and things like that. And that also helps with anxiety. You know, people are always worried about what if this, what if what if that, and our mind races, but constantly try and practice bringing it back to the
Bringing it.
now.
Mm-hmm.
It's so extremely important, and it's a really good mind tool.
Thank you. Um, can you just, I'm just interested, what kind of technique do you use for meditation? Do you just close your eyes and concentrate on your breath, or do you do something else? Do you repeat a mantra, or?
I do loads of different ones because
Okay.
all different, people are completely different. So
Mm-hmm.
people, you know, will suit whatever's their meditation. So I can listen to apps on the telephone, like the phone is calm as well. I listen to music.
Mm-hmm.
I also do affirmations. So I do affirmations in my head and I say thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm always practicing gratitude the whole time. So
Mm-hmm.
when I get up in the morning, the first thing I actually say is thank you. Thank you for the fact that I've woken up, and I always say peace, love and harmony, because that's what I want for the world.
Mm-hmm.
But what I do is I practice that. You know, I go and have a shower, and rather than worry about, oh, what I've got to do, and don't get me wrong, your mind does do that, it's
Of course
just
it does.
enjoy the shower. It does, but just enjoy the shower and just keep remaining in the now. But yeah, there's all kinds of meditation. You can be, I mean, I teach meditation anyway. You know, I take people on a journey. You close your eyes. You initially, you know, we breathe in some essential oils. We do breathing for the count of 4 and breathing out. So you concentrate on your breathing. And then I take people on their little journey to a safe place, or a place that they feel comfortable. And then what you can do is after that, I give them the tools to actually practice that and go back to your safe place. So
Mm-hmm.
it's really interesting, really interesting.
It is indeed. And you said about being grateful from the morning you wake up. And I know you're a big fan of The Secret, Rhonda Byrne, and so am I. I'm actually doing the Magic book
Oh,
at
I
the
love the
moment.
magic.
So do I. I'm about 1/3 of the way through, and it is incredible, and it makes you realize how important gratitude is and how many things we take for granted. And of course, our mind will always try to find out what's wrong, and it's up to us to, rather than focusing on what could possibly go wrong, to bring it back to the present moment, or to what we would like to happen, rather than what could possibly go wrong, because there are a million things that could go wrong at any given moment.
Exactly. And you know what? We all face challenges in this world. And don't get me wrong, you know, I have challenges come at myself, but it's how you actually deal with it.
Mhm.
And what I do is there's also a very good book called The Celestine Prophecy.
I've read
And
it,
that
yeah.
is all about energies. It talks to you about things happen for reasons, and there's no such thing as a coincidence. You know, you meet people for reasons. And how I look at it is, if there's something negative that happens in my life, I look at it and I say, right, okay, that's obviously happened for a reason. So I'm either not going to go down that route, or I need to go on another route. And what happens, it generally does, if you don't go into a negative mode, it generally does reveal itself to you to show you what path to go to. It is amazing. And the magic is, I love it. I'd love it. I think everyone should read it. It's
100%.
Yeah. It does really concentrate your mind. It's really easy book to follow because you can do it in your everyday life. And actually last year I did a Facebook Live on the magic every day for a month.
Oh, really? Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
yeah,
How did that work then?
yeah, really well. What I did is I did a Facebook Live, and I woke up in the morning and I was like, "Morning, everyone! Right, it's day one now. Today I want you to do," and I followed the magic practice,
Oh, I
and
see.
people were following me.
All
Yeah,
right. That's
yeah, it's
awesome.
good.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
Spreading
yeah.
the gratitude.
Yes,
That's
and
brilliant.
I do, like I say to people, like the other day I put something on and I said that, you know, it costs nothing to do a random act of kindness, even if you smile at someone or you do, you know, chat to someone, and it could make a complete difference to that person's day. Yeah.
Absolutely. It's the ripple effect that our friend
Yes.
Will Polston says.
Yes.
It's being kind to someone spreads in so many ways that you can never imagine, because it will affect them, and in turn it will affect the people that they will interact with them, and so on. So it's very powerful.
It is. Yeah, we love a bit of Will Polston.
Most certainly. Liz, let's go back to mental health. And actually, there is something that I wanted to discuss with you and ask you, and that's about the stigma that there is around mental health. So people don't, maybe it's because they don't understand it, but it is something that people won't easily talk about. Whereas if you have a physical health problem, you most people won't have any hesitation going left, right and center, speaking about their disease. But when it is mental, it's not the same. Why do you think that's the case?
I personally think that people are frightened of it.
Mm-hmm.
People don't understand it. It's a lack of education, hence the fact why I've written a book to talk more about. People know about depression because there's quite a few people, and it's in the media a lot. But with psychosis, people are frightened because they don't understand it. I mean, I took a course last couple of days, a mental health, and obviously training people up to become mental health first aiders. And one of the sessions is on psychosis. And I asked the question and said, look, what is psychosis? And there was only one person that actually knew what it was. And it was quite frightening, really. So I obviously, told them about it. They couldn't believe it. And it's educating people. I don't think the media helps to a certain degree because they can dramatize things and make things dramatic, and really that frightens people. Whereas if someone if people read my book and then they meet me, my episodes are very frightening, or can and have been, but when they meet me, they'll realize, it happens, but I go to hospital and recover. Mm-hmm. But it's educating people.
So I wonder if it is also because the mental health or our mind is connected with a sense of identity of who we are. Whereas my hand or my arm, no matter what happens, I can see that as a part of me. But if it is my mental health or my thoughts, my emotions, it's not something that I have an understanding of. So if that is affected, I'm only assuming now. It is not. I just want your opinion on that. Could that be the case as well?
Yeah, totally understand. And also with mental health, people can't see it. Uh-huh. So as you said, physically, you can see whether you've got a broken arm, but mental health, you can't. So you don't know what's going on in someone's mind. You don't know, anything. And unless they talk about it, which is what I try and encourage to do, you wouldn't know. So yeah, it's the unknown. I have received stigma, judgment, discrimination in the past, which has been very upsetting. But, it's the lack of education, and people can't see what you're thinking. Hence the fact why I talk out about it now, because the more people that talk out, the more you're going to reduce stigma and discrimination and make it the norm.
I agree, and there shouldn't be a stigma around it because it is a disease. Like it's and it can be cured. So putting a stigma on it only makes it more difficult. You
Yeah.
mentioned about being a mental health first aid instructor. Can you explain what that is?
Yeah, of course I can. And just to sort of clarify, Aji, I don't actually see it as a disease. I
Okay.
see it as because you can't catch it or anything like that, I suppose. I see it as a condition that you have to manage. Because I've been diagnosed with bipolar. It's not going to go away. There's no cure for it. But what I do is I have coping mechanisms and I manage it in order for me to prevent myself having a relapse.
I
So
see.
that's how I see it. Other people see it differently, but that's how I see it. But, yeah, going back to what you asked me about mental health training. Oh my goodness, I'm so pleased that they're doing this. They're trying to, because we have physical first aiders at work and the mental health first aiders, we should be running them in conjunction and it should have the same importance as physical, personally. So yeah, I run courses. I do a 2-day course, which is mental health first aid. People become first aiders. There is a mental health 3-hour awareness course for senior leadership people or managers. And then there's also a 1-day, which is like a mental health champion. They do offer youth courses as well for people, young children and teachers and things like that. And also they offer armed forces. So they're run or they're produced by the Mental Health First Aid England. And the courses are absolutely brilliant, and I enjoy delivering them. And the feedback I got recently, the people were just, they loved it. That, it's very informative. That we provide a coaching model to give people confidence to deal with people, and it's a very, very good feedback.
That's I want you to explain a bit more what is a mental health first aider, because all of us know about first aid when you have a minor injury, for example, or something like that. But what does a mental health first aider do?
Right. So say someone comes up to you. It could be that they're in a crisis. So if that is the case, you'd obviously dial 999, or they might have a crisis card. Or apart from that, you'd speak to them. You'd actually identify, make sure that they're comfortable and things like that, but also listening to someone talking about whether they feel down, whether they feel anxiety. It could be anything, a workplace stress or anything like that, and then signposting them. Mental health first aiders are not actually, we're not counsellors. We're there to listen. We're there to show empathy. We're there to signpost people in the right direction. Now, whether that be the doctors, a psychiatrist, useful websites, helpful websites. I've got a manual actually. It's here, I'll show you. Look, it's here. It's called, if anyone can see it, it's called the Mental Health First Aid Manual. And it's quite, it's quite big, but it has got so much helpful information. It's got websites, it's got apps, phone apps, and it's so helpful. But as I said, we signpost people. We're not there to offer advice. We're not there to solve someone's problem, but we're there to signpost people in the right direction.
I see. And what about then I know that you have involvement with charities that are dealing with mental health, and you are on a mission to raise awareness. So share something of that with us, please.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I currently do talks in schools for 15 to 16-year-olds in secondary schools with my sister to try and help young people not make the same mistakes that I did and not talk about it. I also do a lot of blogs. I'm a mind media champion as well. And I raise
that? Sorry?
you know, the charity Mind.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm a media. So I go and do, I've done TV work, and I've
All
done,
right.
yeah, different things like that to help them. But also I've done quite a lot of charity dues where I've raised money for Mind and Young Minds. I did the half marathon recently, and we raised £1,500 for Young Minds, which is brilliant. And
Congratulations.
what I do is I do events and incentives at work to raise money for mental health. My book that I've written, I actually, some of the proceeds are going to a mental health charity called Sane, and that is to help them. I do a lot for Bipolar UK as well. I've just actually recently become an ambassador of them. So I try and promote the charities and try and get as much money in order to help people with their mental health.
I see. And your website, Heads to Minds, tell us about that as well.
Yeah, I've set up a website which is called Heads to Minds, and I have different things on there. I have a newsletter which I send out on a monthly basis, just informing different things, you know, well-being, what helps, different tips, and maybe have a subject. I mean, this month we're talking about postnatal depression, and we're talking about menopause for the women. You know, sometimes there's stuff on for men as well. I also have got people sharing their stories on there, which is called Share and Care. So you can see other people, men and women, what they've gone through. I've got my training on there as well. And also I've got like a journey so far, so you can actually see what I've been doing in my work as well. So, yeah.
That's great. Liz, I'd like to ask some quick fire questions. Some of them are relevant to what we were talking about, but not necessarily. So I want, if you had a chance to go back in time and meet your 20-year-old self and offer her a piece of advice that could potentially change her life, what would that be?
That is a brilliant question, Ajay. I love that question. I would actually not worry about what other people think. I would be not afraid to talk out and be myself, because for many, many years I've hidden away, not spoke about my feelings or my emotions, not be myself. I'm, you know, scatty as hell. I always, or have in the past, shied away from that. And I shouldn't. You should let your true personality come out and not be afraid to be yourself. Talk out, share with people about how you feel. Walk away from negativity. Call them mood hoovers. We don't be wanting any of them. And just try and enjoy life and not worry about what's going to happen in the future. You know, spend time in the now, which is what we talk about mindfulness. Spend time with your family and friends. Don't worry about someone else has got a bigger car, someone else has got a bigger house. It doesn't matter. They're materialistic things. And believe me, if I think back to when I was younger and I was a nightmare, I would change and spend more time with my family, my friends, and doing experiences.
Thank you. And I agree with that, to express yourself without being afraid of other people's judgment. And I know that from personal experience, because I was there until about 3 years ago. And we all have, I believe, a gift to share with the world. And if we are afraid of what people might think of it and we keep it all inside of us, then we are doing a disservice to everyone else, really, apart from ourselves, but also to everyone else as well.
That is so true, Ajay. And it's, yeah, that is so important, because the amount of times that I tried to be myself and then people said, you know, oh, no, you can't do that. You can't do that. My worst word in the vocabulary is can't, because believe me, you can. Okay. You can achieve anything in this world if you put your mind to it. Ignore the people that say you can't. because I did it. I listened to people for years.
Mm-hmm.
And as you said, going back, and if I was like 20 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
I would ignore those and say, I can do it, you know, because you can.
Absolutely. You know, the people that say you can't, what they mean is that they don't know how to do it.
Yeah,
So they they project their own limitations onto you. So maybe they can't. So that doesn't mean that
that is
you
very
can't.
true. Yeah. Yeah, that is very true.
Let me ask something else then, Liz. If you had a magic wand and you could wave it and instantly change something in the world as it is today, what would that be?
Oh my goodness. Do you know what, Adji? I have actually got a magic wand. I've got a Harry Potter magic wand. Do you know what? It's so funny. I would, my motto, I've got a tattoo for it, is peace, love, and harmony in the world. And if I could just go like that and just change it so there's not so much greed, there's not, you know, and just have love in the world. And so everybody's nice to everybody, no one's stressed. I would just do that. I'd love it. And we all live happy and yeah, we're positive and the energy's flowing. Yeah, I'd love it.
That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. Liz, would you like to share the biggest mistake you've done the last year or so that you could help people by sharing that yourself, help people but to avoid that, doing it themselves?
Biggest mistake, that is very, in the last year, is probably not getting my book done quick enough. Yeah, no. I'm trying to think, biggest mistake is, that's a tough question, that is, because there probably are, but because I focus on the positive, I try not to see it as a mistake.
Okay.
Because we're only human.
A lesson then, the biggest lesson.
Lesson.
Let's rephrase it. Because mistakes are always opportunities to learn. So they are lessons.
That is very true.
Like
lessons is listen to people rather than, you know, butt in and try and, you know, this is what I want to do, is actually listen, because you actually learn and can create really good connections when you actually listen actively to what people are saying. And I would say that I would not be afraid. The lessons I've learned is not be afraid to be the person that you are, that I am, and not be embarrassed about the fact that I am, you know, I can be scatty. I'm, you know, say things at the wrong time sometimes, and not be worried about it. And look, and if people look at you in some way as if, you know, down at you, is not be affected by it, because I have in the past, and it's affected my confidence massively. And don't get me wrong, it still does to a certain degree, but I try and, you know, not look at it like that and say that's their problem, not mine.
Thank you. Liz, what piece of advice would you give someone? Let's say someone is listening to this right now, and they either themselves or they know someone that they suspect that there is something not right with their mental health. What's the one piece of advice you could give them?
Yeah, I would encourage them to talk, get them to see a GP straight away. If they're not and they're in denial, perhaps suggests the holistic route, which is meditation, mindfulness. There's loads of, you know, there's hypnotherapists out there, there's mind coaches, people like that. They're so interesting and really helpful with your mind, because it all stems from here. And if you can get that right, then you're halfway there, definitely.
Brilliant. And can you tell us also about your book, which is very recently released, and you have it right there in front of you. All right.
Look at the colours. I love it.
So it's a beautiful cover. Yes, I love it as well, with the cogwheels in the brain. It was
Yeah. It's
so
all
it's
about the mind, and it's all about two heads together, two minds, and how it works and interacts. And when you're talking to someone,
uh-huh.
you can absorb their negative energy, and it's how to protect yourself from their negative energy. And it's yeah. Oh, but I'm over the moon because as I said, a percentage is going to a mental health charity, but also it's getting people talking. I mean, since it's been released 2 weeks ago,
Mm-hmm.
it's people are buying it and it's brilliant. And the reason I've done it is because I wanted to share with people about me not talking for years and years and then having a breakdown, and just what I've been through and obviously how my life's affected, but also it's got a spiritual contact with it because I firmly believe in energies in our world and things like that. So it talks about that, but also it talks about my family's perspective. So it talks about my partner, what he's been through. It talks about my mum, it talks about my nieces, it talks about my sister, and it also talks about my boss. So it gives their perspective on what it felt like
Mm-hmm.
dealing with me, what it's like to live with someone with bipolar. So this book reaches out to not only people that are going through mental health issues, but also people who are looking after people with mental health issues. So I've done it in two heads, really, two minds. So yeah.
I will put a link to the Amazon, and I believe it's on Kindle as well. So I will link
Yes.
them on the show notes for people to have a look and get it.
Oh, thank you.
My pleasure. And Liz, what's the best way for people to connect on you or follow you? Where would you
Yeah.
direct them?
Well, as I said before, my website is www.heads, as in the number 2 minds.co.uk. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram, although I don't know how to really use that at the moment, but I'm learning.
Mm-hmm.
I'm on LinkedIn,
Mm-hmm.
Liz Rotherham. I'm on LinkedIn, which is a very good platform, social platform. And yeah, my website, you can contact me on my website via email. And happy to have a chat, or as I said, I do training in mindfulness meditation. I do a lot of holistic therapy. I do healing as well now. So yeah, if you want to have a chat, or you're unsure about something, then please get in contact.
Awesome. Liz, any parting words, anything else that you wanted to share with us in the podcast today, and I completely missed asking you?
No, that's fine. No, you have. I think you're brilliant. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. I think you're an amazing guy. And the weird thing is I met you probably about a year ago at a networking event, which is a great way to meet people,
Mm-hmm.
because I met, Adji, yourself at networking. We didn't really have a chance to talk, but isn't it weird how we've now come back maybe a year later and we're now connected? So you know people that I know, and vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a good thing to do. So if you ever get the opportunity to go to a networking event or put yourself out the comfort zone, do it, because you don't know where that will lead you.
Absolutely. And we were saying earlier before we started recording that everything happens when it is the right time for it to happen, and the dots will connect when they're meant to. So it's a matter of having faith in the process and not trying to necessarily rush things, or because they will happen when it's the right time for them to
Yeah.
happen.
Yeah, if you keep a positive mind, and just remember we all face challenges, but it's how you react to them. Try and flip it over. If you wake up in a grumpy mood, try and change your mindset straight away at the first moment of the day, because then that will affect the rest of your day. Just be open to meeting people and where it leads you. And yeah, as you said, thank you so much for this opportunity to come on this podcast, and I'm really grateful that we've obviously met up again.
Liz, thank you very much for being in the Personal Development Essentials podcast, and I wish you all the best with your book and all the endeavors, and raising awareness about mental health. Thank you very much for being here today.
That's great. Thank you very much, Ajay.